How's it going, everyone? This is Midnight Strike 3625, back again for another album review. This time we're going to be talking about an album that came out last year, and it is Dream Theater's newest album, Distance Over Time. So as I said, this album was released last year in 2019, early 2019 in February, and is Dream Theater's first album since the lackluster performance of The Astonishing in 2016, which at the time I reviewed and gave it pretty high marks considering how much its shortcomings and how far it fell from the previous self-titled release, which I gave a 9 out of 10. So this is Dream Theater's first album since that shortcoming, and in my opinion it has dramatically and immensely improved on the formula that Dream Theater started with Images and Words. Now, this is a very consistent and to-the-point Dream Theater album. It's more heavy metal than it is progressive metal, although it does have a lot of progressive elements in it. They seem very straightforward and to the point, and it doesn't really stray off or fuck around too much with the structure of the songs like Dream Theater tend to do, especially in the recent albums such as their 2011 album, which I'm actually blanking, A Dramatic Turn of Events. I was blanking on the name. A Dramatic Turn of Events, and their self-titled release. They had a lot of songs that just kind of went all over the place, and even though those are very good albums in their own right, I think that this album definitely surpasses that, and is probably even their best release since Train of Thought in 2003. Now, Dream Theater, to me, have a trifecta of albums, a top 3, and their best 3 albums, to me, are Images and Words, Metropolis Part 2, and 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. Now, no album so far has surpassed those 3 albums for me, but I might have to add a 4th album to that trifecta because this album right here, Distance Over Time, is just that good. It adds on to what made Dream Theater so popular and so famous in the first place with those 3 aforementioned albums that I mentioned in the past, and it brings a whole new level of consistency and flow and just fluidity to the song structure and the way that they are crafted that it's just so easy to get into and jam out and not feel like you're wasting any time. Now, this album right here, I'm going to show you guys the back, has 9 songs here: Untethered Angel, Paralyzed, Fall Into the Light, and Barstool Warrior, Room 3, 137, S2N, At Wits End, Out of Reach, Pale Blue Dot, and a 10th hidden track that for some reason is not on the back here, and that is Viper King, which actually begins in a Renegade-style synthesizer in the beginning, and it kind of sounds like that, and it gets into a more heavy beat as the song goes on, and let me just say, everything is just completely where it needs to be on this album as far as fluidity and consistency as well. And some of the problems that I had with the last 2 or maybe even 3 or 4 releases from Dream Theater are solved tenfold with this album. My biggest problem was Dream Theater's softer and slower songs kind of overriding the heavier songs and really distracting from what the band, in my opinion, was trying to convey with those songs. And this album right here brings a whole new level of consistency with it, and even the softer songs, such as Barstool Warrior, where it gets into a softer song mid-tempo or midway into the song, actually adds to the album instead of taking away from it. Now, that was a huge problem, and I actually detailed this in my review of Dream Theater's self-titled release, as well as the review finale for that year, 2013. The album seemed to be carried completely by 3 songs: Enigma Machine, Illumination Theory, and The Enemy Inside, and the rest were pretty much filler, but those 3 songs were so good that it pretty much carried the weight of the entire album. This album is completely different with that, in that regard, because every single song is amazing. And I don't say that about a lot of albums, but this album just takes the cake for me. I gotta add it to the trifecta. I mean, is it better than those 3 albums that I mentioned? Images and Words, Metropolis Part 2, and 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence? Well, no, I don't really think so, but it's definitely on par with, say, Metropolis Part 2, which is my 3rd favorite Dream Theater album, and now I think I have another 3rd favorite right here. being Distance Over Time. My favorite song on here has got to be At Wits End. It is the longest song on here. It's got the most progressive elements. It begins with an intro that sounds very reminiscent of 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence Part 4, I believe. The Test That Stumped Them All. It begins with a very similar riff to that, except it's very heavy guitars, and it's just got amazing vocals from James LaBrie, and it's a very heavy-hitting song. And one of the best things about it is it doesn't stray too far from the original point of the song, and even when it gets into those progressive parts, it doesn't really feel like a completely different song, like it's straying away, like I said. Another good song on here is S2N. That's got to be probably my second favorite. Viper King, as I mentioned before, as the hidden track as well. The very radio-oriented songs on here are probably Untethered Angel and, of course, the song Paralyzed, which, of course, were the 2 lead singles for the album. And I gotta say, they fit absolutely perfectly on this album, even though some of the other songs, the longer songs, are a little bit more progressive, but in a very consistent and fluid way. These songs are straightforward in their own right and are more on the heavy metal spectrum of things. So this album melds perfectly together, and it is appropriately Dream Theater's best-selling album of their career, and it definitely deserves a spot up there with the greats. Metropolis Part 2, Images and Words, and of course 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. So now the fourth one, Distance Over Time, guys. If you haven't already bought this album, I highly suggest that you pick it up and support the band by buying the actual CD. None of that Spotify shit that don't give band members hardly anything. See Mike Portnoy's Twitter rant on that, and I actually side with him. This is Midnight Strike 3625. I am going to rate this album a 9.8 out of 10. Right here. If you can see the numbers. 9.8 out of 10, just shy of perfection. Absolutely love it. This is Midnight Strike 3625. Keep calm and rock on.